Hey, what's up? It's just Jay. I just want to talk about a little theory that I have, and I call it the IBD Spectrum. When I look at IBDs and what my opinion now is on IBDs, I almost look at IBDs as a spectrum. I look at them at like starting with something like IBS and transitioning to ulcerative colitis, and then ultimately ending up at Crohn's disease. You know what? Is that a fact? No, it's not a fact. But it's my opinion through observation and through feedback from people's experience in getting sick and becoming med-free. And you think about how many people along the way, why does it seem like a lot of people initially they might get diagnosed, oh, you have IBS, you have some issues. Then they might not do anything to actually change their situation, and they end up back at the doctor's a year later, 2 years later, and it says, yeah, you do a colonoscopy, you suffer from UC. Then you see somebody, maybe they end up on some pharmaceutical drugs. Another 2 years later, maybe 5 years later, they're sorry, I want to inform you now after doing another colonoscopy, it looks like now you have Crohn's disease. So you can see the progression from a lot of people. When they start from IBS, they might go to colitis, and they ultimately go to Crohn's disease. And like I said, it's not fact. It's just my observations. And when I look back, even with my own situation, I remember when my problems first started. You know, in the beginning, my problems were pretty simple. I remember I had some gas. I had a dairy sensitivity, so I get some farts. You know what I mean? If I was to eat dairy, I had some softer stools, and that probably went on for a few years. And I just really thought I had IBS, or maybe I was sensitive to dairy and too much fried foods. But I was cool with that. I just was saying, okay, you know what, I could deal with that. If I wanted to eat that stuff, I would deal with it, and I deal with the consequences. If I didn't eat that kind of stuff, I didn't suffer any problems. But because the time I was a bachelor, I did eat a lot of that stuff, and I just dealt with going to the bathroom and being soft stool and having some other things, the odd stomach cramp. And then going through this transition, I remember about a year later, maybe a year and a little bit after that, I noticed that I had the same symptoms, but some of my symptoms increased in severity, and I had a few additional symptoms. I noticed that my gas became really smelly if I ate milk. I noticed that I started to really feel tired and fatigued. I'd wake up some nights sweating, like sweating pretty bad, and just wondering why I wake up wet. I would see the odd mucus in my stool. Not really a lot of blood, but I'd see some mucus. And then from that seemed to be consistent for about a year or so. Then a year later, all the stuff that I just mentioned, things got more severe, and I got additional symptoms. I started to develop pain in my lower right abdomen. And especially when I drank milk, or at that time I was drinking a lot of protein shakes because I was hitting the gym hardcore and I wanted to be built and big and you name it. And then I really started to notice that I had consistent mucus and actually blood specks and sometimes quite a bit of blood in my stool. It became quite regular. My stools were regularly, for the most part, mushy and unformed. And if I did happen to have a formed stool, they were always skinny little pieces, like really skinny little pieces. I'd wake up with crazy night sweats. I'd wake up completely soaked. There'd be water all around me. I suffered from skin rashes. It looked like starting of eczema. My joint pain started to get really bad. I'd look in the mirror and say, wow, I'm pale. I was really, really pale. Then I finally said to myself, I finally manned up and said, hey, you know what? I have an issue. Looking at all the stuff, doing the research on the net, I came to terms and realized I probably suffered from an IBD. I wasn't sure if it was Crohn's or colitis, but I definitely knew I had something. But then I look at why I did that, and I think that if I just ignored everything, if I ignored all these symptoms, then maybe everything would just go away. And now I look at it and I think about myself and I say, what an idiot, man. What an idiot move. Why did I do that? Why didn't I get things looked at right from the beginning? It finally took a massive flare after getting my first colonoscopy to get diagnosed. Not doing a colonoscopy properly, or at least the prep and stuff, and taking probiotics afterwards. You know what? It took all of that, losing 30 pounds and going through the most excruciating pain of my life, to finally get my shit together. I mean, ultimately, really, no pun on words, get my shit together. And I'm sitting here today, med-free, going through all the stuff that I've went through. And it just makes me wonder, And I sit and I look at it. I look at it from the opposite side, and I say, I looked at how my symptoms, how they got like worse along the way. And then I look at my healing in the same aspect, and I say, I went through healing, whether it be 2 to 2.5 years, and I'm still working on like ultimate healing to feel 120% and feel better. But I watched how my healing went the opposite way of the spectrum. It went from like Crohn's disease to UC to IBS. And like I said, again, this is my opinion, but I went from when I was healing, I remember I could tolerate literally like minimal foods. I literally ate like green beans and chicken in the beginning. I remember my stool was still soft in the beginning. I did have mucus. Then from a few months, I don't know the exact timeline off by hand, I remember my pain started to go away in my stomach. My lower abdomen pain started to go away. I wasn't having as many bowel movements. My joint pain started to improve. And then as that started to get better, a few months, however long it was, it could have been a little bit more, I noticed that my bowel movements started to get really good. They started to be firm. I noticed that my joint pain, literally, it started to go away. Things started to get back more to normal. I look in the mirror. I started to actually have some color back. Well, I live in a cold place in the winter, so you always get a little bit pale in the winter. That's just the nature of where I live in the Midwest. But really, this spectrum that I'm talking about, like I said, it's not fact. I'm just pulling it as something that I believe. But it seems really common when I speak to people, when as they got sick, how they did notice slight symptoms and they increased, like, along the way, and how they got worse when they went from IBS to UC to having Crohn's disease along the way. And also when I speak with people that when they were getting better, it went backwards along the same spectrum, just like I described. So I want anybody that's listening to this recording or watching this video just really to realize, when you're healing, realize you don't heal like presto, bam, you're healed right now. It takes time. It takes tweaking things and looking and saying, hey, am I doing everything right? Do I need to change? Do I need to take a few steps back, do things properly? And for you to stay the course, to keep on doing things, even though that things get rough, just keeping at it and keeping with the tweaking and really staying course and not giving up. You don't get sick in 6 months. You really don't. You think about all the abuse the majority of people put their bodies through to get sick in the first place, so you can't expect to get back to 100% in 6 months. It really is. Patience is a huge virtue that's so important to getting better. So remember that the next time you're doubting yourself or you're thinking things aren't perfect, realize patience is a virtue, and it does take a lot of time and patience to get better. So keep at it, keep tweaking, keep doing your things, because you know what, at the end of the day, when you're consistent with this and you're honest and rational with your approach, you will get better. You will see improvements. Hopefully it's helped out. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, what's up? If you thought this video was awesome, informative, and hopefully inspiring, and you want to learn more about IBD issues, alternative treatments, and how others have overcome their disease to live amazing med-free lives, then click the link below to visit my site.